Show of hands, who here likes the novel Pride and Prejudice by Jane Austen? What about the 2005 film Pride and Prejudice? Or what about the 1995 BBC miniseries Pride and Prejudice? Well, have I got something for you. May I introduce the 2008 miniseries Lost in Austen, written by Guy Andrews and directed by Dan Zeff. Honestly, I have no idea how to do this series justice based off of words alone. It is somehow the perfect blend of abomination and masterpiece, and that is a feat that is not easily done. It kind of makes me question whether Jane Austen, as people say, would roll around in her grave if she saw it. However, despite this, I will be attempting to do it justice by breaking down some of the most crazy plot points from this series, but also explaining why it works so well, even though it completely erases kind of the foundations of Jane Austen's novel, Pride and Prejudice. Before I get started, I would just like to say if you want to see more content like this, please consider liking and subscribing to this channel. It would be very much appreciated. Now let's get into what Lost in Austen is about and why I unfortunately love it. Lost in Austen follows the main character, Amanda Price, whose one escape from her mundane modern life and horrible boyfriend is Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice. She has just received a terrible attempt at a proposal when she discovers that Elizabeth Bennet has magically traveled to her world through a once destinationless door in her bathroom. Does this sound amazing to you yet? I thought so. Anyways, Amanda feeds her curiosity and longing for escapism by going through a supposed magical bathroom portal, essentially swapping places with Elizabeth at the very beginning of the Pride and Prejudice plot. Throughout the series, she attempts to ensure that all the plot points happen, which more or less backfires in ways no one could ever imagine. I know this already sounds a little crazy from the get-go, but stick with me, it will get much crazier from now on. But before we get into the details of this plot, I would like to issue a spoiler warning. This show does a lot of unpredictable things with the plot of Pride and Prejudice that I don't even think the biggest book fans would expect. So I would be cautious when going into this review because you might want to be surprised by these things. However, while I was watching the series for the first time, I did spoil myself for the later episodes while reading the r/Jane Austen subreddit, which does exist, and I encourage everyone here to join. But even with those plot points spoiled for me, I still got shocked by the execution of those things. So I would say go ahead and watch this video if you're curious, but if you want to save those surprises for yourself, then I do not blame you. Go ahead and watch the series. It is a very enjoyable watch. But if you're deciding to stay, let's get into my thoughts on this series. I think the most glaring issue with this entire series is the fact that Amanda Price sticks out so sorely amongst all of her Regency era co-stars. Let's talk Regency Era hairstyles. Regency Era ladies' hair was characterized by buns on the top of the head, such as Apollo or Psyche knots, in addition to curls and ringlets framing the face. Similar to how some would separate the curtain bangs from the rest of their longer hair, Regency Era ladies would do the same by separating the longer hair from the shorter hair in the front. They would also accessorize their hair with ribbons, feathers, caps, and combs. Which is why I can't bring myself to believe that a character such as Amanda Price, who idolizes and romanticizes the world of Pride and Prejudice, would not commit herself to those same beauty standards in that way. Instead, she maintains her very straight, long hair and a very blunt fringe instead of conforming to the ways that the ladies put their hair up, essentially not at all blending in with Regency society. But she doesn't really have to worry, apparently, because no one seems to question why her hair is like this in the first place. Despite her long straight hair and her blunt fringe, the most any character does to question it is Kitty asking if she can do her hair at some time to make it look like hers.
How do you get those ringlets?
By the application of hot irons. I'd be delighted to arrange yours if you'd let me.
No. I may be losing grip on reality, but I'm still in control of my hair.
Which is sweet and all, but I just don't buy into it that this is how it would go down if anyone in the Regency era saw Amanda Price's hairstyle. I said it. And don't even get me started on what Amanda wears when she enters the Regency era for the first time. Look, I know it is not completely her fault that she showed up in a leather jacket and skinny jeans, but the general idea of it is so insane to me. There were some comments made about it, but not to my liking. I think the entire cast of characters underreacted to her outfit, except for Mr. Bingley. He definitely reacted.
Now, let us sort the sheep from the goats. My daughters Jane, Mary, Kitty, Lydia. Elizabeth, the very goatiest, is not here. In her stead, we have Miss Amanda Price. Charmed. Charmed.
Yeah. And let's just take some time to rapid fire through some of the craziest moments from the first episode alone. First, Amanda questions if the whole situation is similar to The Truman Show, which rightfully so. But then she wakes up next to Lydia Bennett and starts talking about girl on girl action and then flashes her privates at the 15-year-old. What? And then, still doubting her new reality, Amanda pinches Kitty to see if her situation is a dream. Then, one of the most shocking scenes for me was when she drunkenly kissed Bingley. There are also some interesting liberties taken with the characters, such as Bingley running away with Lydia and becoming an alcoholic, or changing Wickham's character completely to make him kind of a surprising good figure as opposed to a predatory figure, and giving him a redemption arc of sorts, which I have very mixed thoughts on. I don't think that Wickham needed the redemption, and I think the story as is more essential to the plot and the conflict. However, I really did like the chemistry between Amanda Price and Wickham, which was a really weird surprise to me. And dare I say it, I think they should have been together at the end. Who said that? And the last change that I'll mention is one that I think I'm okay with personally. It doesn't really have any plot significance, only to kind of add a little bit onto her character, but making Caroline Bingley a lesbian. Look, usually I like to gatekeep what the character has always originally been, and I don't like to deviate from those things very much unless it's really important to the character or it just makes a lot of sense. And again, this had no significance really whatsoever when it came to the actual Lost in Austen plot, but I'm fine with it. So, to all the lesbians out there, you now have representation within Pride and Prejudice, and it's all thanks to Lost in Austen. So, despite all of these atrocities, besides Caroline Bingley being a lesbian, but despite all of these atrocities committed within Lost in Austen, why is it so good? Personally, I have always been a really big fan of this type of time travel immersive genre. For example, I love the show Outlander. Highly recommend, by the way, because there's something so intriguing about watching a futuristic character be transported into the past and have to adjust to the cultural norms of that time. I think Outlander does this really well, and Lost in Austen does it interestingly, but it's not unenjoyable. And it's also fun to see if any of the past characters find out if this person is from the future. And then, even more rarely, is when the past person is transported into the future. Like, of course, I want to see Mr. Darcy learning what a Teletubby is. Now, that is a scene that I never knew I needed, but I definitely did. On another note, I would love to see this cast do a regular adaptation of Pride and Prejudice. They're not exactly what I pictured in my head when I was reading the book, but now that I've seen them in Lost in Austen, I just can't help but long for the series that will never happen. I would love to see Elizabeth's actor take on the role of Elizabeth in a much more present sense because she was barely in the show at all. And of course, seeing a younger Mrs. Bennett is always a pleasure to see. I feel like most adaptations want to make her a little bit older, a little unstable, but I feel like they attribute that to her being older, and I just don't think that's the move. So I would love to see a younger Mrs. Bennett one day. I guess it'll never happen with this cast, so I'll have to give up on that one. And similar to my first point, I just love the idea of being transported into your favorite novel. Even if you don't completely relate to Amanda Price, the fact that she's wanted by all of the male main characters of this series is a feat within itself. It feeds into that main character syndrome, and who wouldn't want to be desired like that sometimes, despite how different and out of place you might be? Lost in Austen may be insanity neatly wrapped in 4 episodes, but I would argue that we need more shows like this. I mean, the reviews speak for themselves. So, the moral of the story is you don't have to take everything so seriously. Sometimes entertainment is the only factor that you need to give something a 5-star rating, and that's okay. I really hope y'all enjoyed my takes on Lost in Austen and give it a try for yourselves. Again, please feel free to like and subscribe, and I will see you in the next video.